Good day, everybody. You have Jeff Jackson, the Forage Fanatic. I've had a few questions start coming in. The weather conditions around the U.S. change on a daily basis. Question of the day is nitrates in forages. And I have beside me here, I have some corn, we have some forage sorghum in the center, and we have some of the wonderful, illustrious Johnson grass from Missouri simulating a sorghum sedan grass today. So for anybody that's got Johnson grass, sorghum sedan grass, hybrid pearl millet, that would be your category over there. So nitrates, multiple things can spur nitrates in plants. Mostly centered around stress conditions, or maybe an over application of nitrogen, or an under application of sulfur, because nitrogen and sulfur make really, really good friends to make crude protein in these products. So if we don't have any sulfur out there and the plant actually gets some nitrogen put in, sits in that plant, then we go through some stress periods. Stress period could be a frost event, a cold overnight inversion, drought stress, obviously. And we can get a spike in nitrates again if we've been extremely dry and we have a rainfall event. Then all of a sudden that plant absorbs more, takes up more free nitrogen in the soil, holds it as a nitrate in the plant. Cereal grains have nitrate issues as well, but our summer crops that we're growing right now that we're more concerned with, sorghum, the sorghum sedan grasses, corn silage, and corn that's being drought stressed in the Midwest right now, and maybe even parts of the high plains down further south. So nitrates accumulate in that plant. So let's do a little dissection here. And I did my best. I even let these plants set out here for an hour and a half so they looked more wilted and more drought stressed for you. So fantastic. So let's take these plants. You have a corn plant. When that plant accumulates nitrates, most of the nitrate is stored in the bottom third of the stalk. So if we were to take this plant apart and we pull the leaves off, pull off some leaves. Well, let's assume that we send this whole plant test in, and the whole plant, leaves, stem, top, tassel, ear, whatever, let's say we send this all in and the sample comes back 5,000 parts per million. 5,000 parts per million on the test that would report that would be a little bit too hot to feed directly at 100% ration or ratio to your livestock, cattle primarily. So at 5,000 parts per million, that's all the plant parts together. If we were to strip just the leaves off and test the leaves alone, the leaves might be 25 or 30 parts per million. The top of the stalk with the tassel and the top two leaves, because I didn't pull those off yet, maybe 100 parts per million. Middle's part of the stalk, take that off now. We got the ear in the middle part of the stalk, 300 or 400 parts per million. So now we're at like 400 parts per million. And this baby right here is where the hot toxic parts are at. So how do we manage some of that? Forage sorghum, sorghum sedan grass, Johnson grass, same thing. Leaves, take those off all day long, not a problem, okay? So let's just imagine that. We got all the, it's right down here, bottom third of the stalk. All right, I'm gonna save those parts for just a second. So when we're harvesting, one of the things that I would suggest is prior to harvest, get out in the field, take some whole plant samples, get them sent into a lab, find out what your whole plant sample parts per million on nitrate is. It's a $25, $30 test. You can't afford not to do that. You have to send that sample in, find out where your baseline is before you harvest the feed, and here's why. Because if you're out there and you've got a chopper going, and you tell the chopper guy, hey, look, normally you're cutting here at about 6 inches high. I need you to go to 9, 10, 11, 12. I need you to cut a foot high so you leave that higher portion of nitrates in the field. Okay? That's simple. We've just eliminated the hot spot. Now maybe we're 1,000, 2,000, 2,500 parts per million, where we've got a really good feed that we can still work with very easily. So first thing is leave the nitrate in the field, cut higher. Second thing would be is try to get that plant, whether it's that plant or you've got your corn silage. There's a bunch of guys going after corn here shortly. If you've got your corn silage, try to get that harvest moisture between 65 and 70%. That's going to be the sweet spot for fermentation. 60% will probably work very well. So let's call it 60 to 70% whole plant moisture going in the pile. Fermentation will happen very good. Please try to get a good inoculant to make sure fermentation happens, and it does it well, because we need to degrade that nitrate that's in there through fermentation. At that point, you can reduce it by 30 to 40%, depending on which study you read. But fermentation will reduce nitrate levels. So now you have cut it high, ferment it well. And then the next thing is make sure you've got another feed stuff that you can blend with. So the solution to pollution is dilution. We need to make sure that there's another feed stuff. And if you're in an environment where all of the crops this year are high nitrates because it's just that harsh, then you need to have a management process to make sure you can either reduce the nitrate or leave it in the field. So those are some of those pieces. That is mechanical harvesting. And if your moisture is above 70 or below 60, I would suggest you don't use a fermenter inoculant. I would suggest you use a preservative, propionic acid, to pickle it. So too high we want to pickle, too low we want to pickle, because the inoculants have a really good range of about 10% where they work well. And outside of those ranges, we need to have help. So talk to a livestock nutritionist maybe, get some more input from them, get a really good inoculant found, located, and used in that scenario. Now the next thing would be grazing. Well, Jeff, how do we graze this high nitrate crop if we've tested it and it shows high nitrates? Okay, well, let's talk about that. Again, the lowest nitrate concentration is going to be in the leaves. So let's just let's make a sorghum Sudan grass plant. We just cut this thing off. Now we're about 40 inches tall. So we've got this 40-inch sorghum Sudan grass out there. We're going to turn cows out. What are they going to eat first? They're going to eat the head, maybe. They're going to eat these leaves. How high did we say the nitrates in the leaves are? Not very high at all. That's going to be their preferential feeding. They're going to feed leaves first, maybe the head, maybe the top third of that plant. So when we're out there grazing, we really aren't super concerned about nitrates until you've grubbed them down to the point where they have to go eat the bottom 8 inches of that stem, okay? Most of the time, by the time they get that far on a sorghum Sudan grass crop, they're going to be crawling the fences and telling you that they need to go somewhere else already anyway. The other piece is, as that rumen gets other bits and pieces of some feed in there that might be a little higher nitrate, we have an acclimation process as well. So grazing really doesn't concern me nearly as much as taking a high nitrate feed crop, putting it in a stored situation, and they're forced to eat it as a high nitrate crop. So, little tidbit there too. So from a grazing standpoint, we really aren't so concerned about nitrates because they're going to start with leaves. They're going to eat the head, the top of the stem. And if you get those cows pulled out of there by the time it gets to the top of your boot, you really shouldn't have a whole lot to worry about. Maybe you have to rotate them faster or find something else. Another suggestion on grazing, make sure you have a couple of really good round bales of no nitrate or low nitrate feed. So if they start getting a bellyache, they'll change their eating habits. Give them something else to go to. Give them a good bale to go graze on. So a few thoughts there. A little bit on nitrates and how to handle some nitrates this summer. This is Jeff Jackson, the Forage Fanatic. I hope you're having a fantastic day and that this content really hits you well. Thank you.